This is 2 pieces of round sterling silver, number 10, and they've been straightened so that they sit next to each other evenly, and the ends have been taped to prevent the ends from being marred while we twist it to make a twisted bracelet. You can also use half round or patterned silver or patterned gold. So I am placing the 2 pieces of round silver into the vise in preparation for twisting them to make a bracelet. Now I'm taking the other end with channel locks to twist this together. Need some adjustment. You want it to fit tight enough, but not so tight that you damage your metal. Okay, now we're going to pull and twist to the right. If you're left-handed, you can twist to the left. But make sure you do it slowly so you see how much twist you want and that it's not bending the wrong way. If you don't put some pressure on it and pull, it can make it uneven as far as going to the right or the left. Now I want this bracelet to open up a little bit because I'm going to flatten it, and so I'm not going to twist it very much. So that's as much as I'm going to twist this, but you could continue to twist it to make it a finer twist to it. A fine, yeah. This one is going to open up when I press it flat. Okay, I'm removing the tape now before I put this in the pickle in preparation for soldering each end. You want to be sure and get all the tape off. Now we are putting the bracelet in the pickle to prepare it for soldering. Okay. Now we're going to set it up for soldering. Actually, I'm going to go to... So one of the things we always have to do is measure it before we solder so we know where to put the pieces of solder to make it come out the right size when all is said and done. I want my finished length to be 5 3/4, which is right here. So if I place my solder right here and right about here, it will be in the right place for when I cut it to measure. Find my twisted tweezers before you get them. Tweezers, where are you? Can't find my tweezers. So I'm going to place the solder where I want my solder joint to be, right there and right there, because that's going to ensure that when I cut this to the right size, I'll have the solder in the right place. I'm going to put a tiny bit of solder flux in the cap because I like to take my piece of solder and put it in the flux before I place it. Look at that. Okay, ready for solder. Okay, I'm using a size 1 tip on the torch because I have a pretty big piece of metal here. I'm going to solder the ends. Here it goes. Okay, now we're going to do this end. There it goes. And we're done. Now we're going to put it in. See, we're putting it in the pickle. So now we're going to use the mill and flatten this so the finished bracelet will look like this. It'll be a little bit open. So I'm pretty conservative on this. That's too much. When it really untwisted it. I didn't want it to do that, but interesting. Anyway, I'm going to keep working at it. It'll look different than this, unfortunately. Wow, it really untwisted it. So I think what I'm going to do is, because it untwisted it so much when I tried to flatten it, I'm going to anneal it and retwist it. So after I twist the bracelet, I'm annealing it so that it will allow me to flatten it. Otherwise, the metal is so hard, it won't allow me to put it through the mill and keep its shape. So after this, I'm going to put it through the mill and flatten it a little bit. So now we're going to use the mill and flatten this bracelet a little bit. So as we flattened it, it opened up a little bit, which is what our goal was. I have to straighten it. It twisted it just a little bit, which I will anneal it and then straighten it. Now I have marked the end of both ends of where I want it to cut it off to make it the right size. Now I'm using the shear to remove the excess silver. I'm just cutting it off at that little mark I made. And be sure and save your silver. This scrap can be reused. So now I'm going to grind the ends off to remove any sharp edges and make them nice and round. And I'm using the grinder on the medium wheel. I'm also wearing gloves because it can get really hot from the friction. Then I'm going to do the other side and it'll be ready to shape. So because I annealed it, I'm going to use Tripoli to get fire scale off. I'm using a board so that the bracelet doesn't get away from me, and it also doesn't misshape the bracelet while I'm trying to finish the surface to make it nice and shiny. So this is Tripoli that I'm using first, and then I'm going to use Zam. Doing the final polishing on this bracelet to make it nice and shiny. Final shine. This is what we do before we form the bracelet. This is the last thing we'll do, and then form it. So now we're going to form the bracelet by using the bracelet mandrel. So we just start by placing it in the center and bringing either side around to the back. And you just do that as much by hand as you can. And now I have a rawhide mallet that I'm going to use to help me bend it. But you could also use a rubber or a plastic hammer, not metal, because metal will mar your silver. One of the things I learned to do is for the final bend is take it over here to the circular mandrel round, and that's where I get the ends to finish going all the way around so that they don't stick up when you're wearing it, and if they stick up they'll catch on things. There we go. Need to make that bend. Now I try it on and make sure that it sits right on the wrist. There's a bracelet.